The young and the restless spoilers shock. The first whisper of death came not with a scream, but with a shiver. Amy Lewis had awoken in the middle of the night, her skin damp with sweat, the echo of a scream still vibrating in her chest. It wasn't her scream, but it had lived inside her dreams like an old ghost returning for something unfinished. The feeling clung to her like smoke. Cold. Lingering. Heavy. Damian. His name surfaced in her mind before she even opened her eyes, as though some unconscious tether had been violently snapped in the night. She sat up, heart pounding, and whispered his name into the dark, only to hear silence respond like a tomb. Damian Kane had been gone for days now, on what was meant to be a strategic trip, an invitation-only gathering orchestrated by the elusive Aristotle Dumas at his private chateau near Nice. The event was cloaked in opulence and secrecy, a collision of global power brokers and carefully curated players. No one knew precisely what was being planned. But Damian had been drawn to the game like a moth to fire. He had called Amy once, days earlier, leaving a message that didn't sound like him, tight, rushed, and strange. "If anything happens, look for the girl in the painting," he had said. Then the line went dead. Amy tried to dismiss the nightmare. She paced the floor of her Genoa City apartment, counting the seconds between breaths, hoping for a message, a ping, a call, anything. But the silence only deepened. And when the news finally broke, it shattered her world in a single headline: unidentified body discovered in private estate outside Nice, investigation underway. The details were scant. French police were tight-lipped. The scene had been cordoned off. No press access. No official identifications released. But within hours, the rumors began to swirl in the same circles that once whispered the name Aristotle Dumas like a myth. Something had gone wrong at the chateau. Horribly wrong. Back in Genoa City, Victoria Newman dropped her coffee when the phone rang. It was Claire. Breathless. Crying. She was calling from Nice. From a holding cell. "They think I did it," Claire choked out. "They think I killed Damian." Victoria couldn't breathe. "What?" "They're saying I was the last person seen near him. There's evidence, they say. They found something in my room. I don't understand. I didn't do anything." Victoria's knees buckled. She clutched the edge of her desk, her mind racing. Claire. Her daughter. In jail. Accused of murder. Of Damian's murder. The man who had stood beside them at the edge of transformation, of something real. She remembered his smile, his charm, his secrets. She also remembered the strange silences that had begun to creep into their conversations before he left. He hadn't said much. But he had looked different. Afraid, perhaps. Or hunted. Within an hour, Victor Newman had deployed lawyers. Nate Hastings, shaken by the news, had rushed to Amy's apartment, only to find her crumpled on the floor, sobbing into a photo of her and Damian taken months ago. "I told him not to go," she kept repeating. "I told him something felt wrong. I told him I had a bad feeling." Across the ocean, Nice had become the center of a growing storm. French police confirmed that the body recovered from the west wing of Dumas's estate bore identification matching Damian Kane. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the head. Time of death, unknown. And the only person allegedly seen in the vicinity around the estimated window? Claire Grace. A scarf with her initials was found near the scene. A broken bracelet she once wore had reportedly been discovered in the fireplace as if someone had tried to burn it. And worst of all, a smear of blood on her luggage. It was a frame job. A cruel, calculated setup. But the evidence was compelling enough for the local authorities, who arrested Claire under suspicion of homicide and denied her bail. Back in Genoa City, Victoria was unraveling. She stormed into Newman Enterprises like a tempest, demanding resources, calling in favors, threatening media outlets. My daughter is being hunted, she told Victor, and someone wants her gone. Victor's expression hardened. He had long suspected that Dumas wasn't merely a businessman. The man dealt in human chess games, manipulations so intricate that by the time you realized you were a pawn, the board had already been burned. But the question wasn't just who framed Claire. It was why. Damian had no known vendetta against Claire. If anything, they had been amicable. Respectful. Their paths had crossed but never collided. Which led to a darker truth: Damian hadn't been murdered because of anything he did to Claire. He had been murdered to trap her. To destroy her by association. To crush Victoria in the most personal way imaginable. Amy knew it too. The moment she heard the words Claire and murder in the same sentence, her entire body rebelled. Damian had told her, long ago, that if anything ever happened to him, the truth wouldn't be in what he left behind, it would be in what others had tried to erase. And so she began to dig. Every sleepless night became an investigation. She hacked into Damian's cloud storage. Scoured surveillance footage from airports, security feeds from hotels. She began tracing the steps of his final days. And that's when she found it. A still frame from a surveillance camera outside the estate. Damian walking into the garden the night of the party. Someone following him. Not Claire. A man. Tall. Wearing a black mask. And on his wrist, an insignia. Amy froze the frame. Enlarged it. The emblem wasn't random. It was Dumas's private symbol, a serpent devouring its own tail. The same emblem used on the wax seals of his letters. The same symbol carved into the marble floors of the chateau. It was him. Aristotle Dumas had orchestrated the death. And worse, he had left no fingerprints. The mask. The deliberate destruction of surrounding cameras. The careful planting of Claire's items. It was all designed to lead investigators down a single, blindingly obvious path. Claire was meant to be the scapegoat. And Amy, who had once seen Dumas only through Damian's wary admiration, now saw the truth: he was a puppeteer of human tragedy, and Damian had gotten too close. Now the walls were closing in. Victoria flew to Nice. She sat across from her daughter through bulletproof glass and promised her, "I will burn down the world before I let them take you." Claire, pale and hollow-eyed, nodded but said nothing. The trauma had begun to consume her. She had been held for 3 days. Questioned. Isolated. The world now knew her as the daughter of a Newman, and the suspect in a murder. And the clock was ticking. Victor called in Interpol connections. Devon Hamilton stepped in to support Amy, who had gone days without food, driven only by grief and obsession. Nate flew to France to meet with attorneys, desperate to protect Amy from further collapse. The entire network of allies in Genoa City began to converge around one central truth: this wasn't just a tragedy. It was a message. Someone had killed Damian Kane to start a war. And somewhere, Aristotle Dumas watched the world fracture. His plan was working. But what he didn't account for, what he never imagined, was that the very people he sought to break had already lost too much in their lives to let another wound destroy them. Amy had nothing left to fear. Claire had nothing left to prove. And Victoria had nothing left to lose. The game had changed. And the next move was theirs. Would you like me to continue with the investigation unraveling Dumas's real motive, or Claire escaping, or Amy confronting him face to face? No one saw it coming. Not the violence, not the silence, and certainly not the quiet certainty with which the French police declared it murder. Damian Kane was dead. The initial report was clinical, cardiac arrest, cause unknown. But within 24 hours, the toxicology report would send shockwaves from Nice to Genoa City. Damian had been poisoned. The substance was rare, almost untraceable. A neurotoxin synthesized from botanical compounds found in northern Africa, one that caused cardiac disruption within minutes and left minimal residual trace once metabolized. A poison chosen by someone who understood not only death, but deception. And whoever had done it hadn't just wanted Damian gone, they had wanted him erased. The investigation turned vicious immediately. French authorities tightened their grip, refusing international press, barring even diplomatic intervention. And then came the twist that tore everything apart. Surveillance footage. Partial fingerprints. An empty glass bearing trace elements of the toxin. And sitting across from Damian during his final meal, the only person on record dining with him before he died, was Claire Grace. The weight of that implication was seismic. Within hours, Claire was arrested by Nice authorities and removed from the estate in handcuffs. The press was waiting. Cameras flashed. Headlines exploded. American heiress detained in French murder investigation. Newman scandal deepens with international arrest. Claire Grace, murderer or pawn? Within minutes, social media ignited. Commentators speculated. Former enemies resurfaced. And back in Genoa City, everything shattered. Amy Lewis collapsed when the news broke. She had been standing at Damian's favorite cafe in the Arts District, waiting for a package he had ordered before his trip. The barista, recognizing her, handed her a small box with a note attached. "He said you'd come," the young man said. Amy barely registered the words. Her phone buzzed. She picked it up. And then time stopped. Claire Grace. Murder suspect. Poison. No bail. No contact. No legal representation. It was a political wall, a strategic isolation. Amy didn't scream. She didn't faint. She stood still, eyes fixed on the headline until the barista asked gently if she was all right. She didn't respond. Her knees didn't give out until she reached the sidewalk. Damian. Her son. Gone. No goodbye. No closure. Just a flat, brutal end and a scapegoat who, if the world was to be believed, sat across from him when he died. But Amy didn't believe it. Not for a second. She had known Claire. Watched her try to rebuild. Seen the pain, the confusion, the struggle for redemption. She had seen how Claire looked at Damian, with curiosity, not malice. There was no hatred. No vendetta. No motive. Whatever happened at that chateau, Amy was certain of one thing: Claire didn't kill her son. But someone wanted the world to think she had. And so Amy booked the next flight to Paris. Alone. When she landed, the city blurred around her like a foreign film spinning too fast. Her hotel room was a sterile cage. She didn't sleep. She didn't eat. She made her way to Nice, to the police station where Claire was being held, only to be denied entrance. Restricted. No visitors. No attorneys at this time. The answer was always the same. Even when Victor Newman himself arrived the next day with two of Europe's most expensive defense lawyers and a diplomatic attaché from the American consulate. No exceptions, the French detective said coldly. This case has political ramifications. Victor's nostrils flared. He had moved mountains in his life, bent governments to his will. He had faced boardrooms, dictators, and rivals with nuclear-grade fury. But never had he felt so powerless. "She's a child," he said quietly, dangerously. "And you're holding her like a terrorist. She is the only person who dined with the deceased." The wine was poured by her. The food tasted together. The utensils cleared. Her fingerprints. The motive is unclear, but the logistics are not. Victor stepped forward. "You're making a mistake." The officer didn't blink. "No, monsieur. I'm making an arrest." Amy couldn't contain her rage. She threw herself into the lobby of the police station, screaming Damian's name, demanding answers. "He was my son," she howled. "He was alive when he left me. He was strong, healthy, and brilliant. What did you do to him?" They escorted her out. But she didn't stop. She stood on the sidewalk and collapsed to her knees, fists pounding the concrete, sobbing like the sky had fallen. Word reached Genoa City by noon. The Newman family entered crisis mode. Victoria couldn't speak when the footage arrived, Claire being shoved into a van, her face swollen from tears, her arms bruised from the arrest. Nikki collapsed into a chair. Nick paced like a caged lion. Phyllis cried into her hands. But it was Summer who asked the only question that mattered. Why Claire? There were no answers. Only theories. Dumas. Revenge. Chaos. Maybe it was all part of a larger game, one in which Damian was sacrificed to set the board. But if that was true, who would benefit? Claire's downfall didn't seem like a logical gain, unless someone wanted to ruin Victoria, or erase Amy, or trigger Victor into a war he couldn't win. And now, with Claire locked away, the narrative was spiraling. Amy began her own investigation. She bribed estate staff. Found a maid who remembered the wine bottle, not from the cellar, madam. From a black bag. Brought in by a man with gloves. She tracked down the estate's kitchen steward, who swore he never saw Claire enter the prep area that evening. She even found a discarded fragment of a wine label hidden in a trash chute that matched a vintage not on Dumas's registry. None of it was admissible. All of it was dismissed. But Amy didn't stop. Grief had turned into rage, and rage had become her engine. She chased down every rumor, followed every whisper. She no longer cared about the rules. Damian was dead. Claire was imprisoned. And somewhere, someone was laughing in the shadows. Victor, in the meantime, prepared a media campaign. He leveraged global news networks to tell Claire's story. Painted her not as a suspect, but a victim. She is being held without due process, he told the press. In a country that promised us civility. It stirred public sentiment. It made headlines. But it didn't change the reality. Claire was still alone. Amy stood outside the prison walls that night, her fingers trailing the cold stone. She imagined Damian inside, reaching for help that never came. She imagined Claire, terrified and cold, wondering why no one believed her. And she made a vow. If no one will burn this place down for you, I will. Because this wasn't justice. This was war. And it had only just begun. Would you like the next part to reveal how Amy uncovers Dumas's secret operation, or should Claire attempt escape? Or Victoria confront the one person she once trusted most? The war beneath Genoa City wasn't being fought in courtrooms or boardrooms, not yet. It was being waged in hushed corners, back hallways, and across glances thick with implications. And now, with Damian dead, Claire imprisoned in a foreign jail, and whispers of betrayal rippling through every corridor of Newman and Chancellor Winters, the focus had shifted sharply to the one name that had begun to echo like a curse, Dumas. Nate Hastings had just come from a private meeting with Audra Charles, a meeting that had left more questions than answers. She had smiled her way through the conversation, as always, her tone laced with professional confidence and just enough distance to deflect scrutiny. But behind that carefully calibrated poise, Nate had sensed something dangerous. Audra wasn't just launching a company, she was executing a strategy. And whatever she was doing, it wasn't only about expansion or profit. It was about survival. Domination. Alignment. She's using the press, Nate finally said to the room, standing in the center of the Chancellor Winters boardroom. She set up a publicity maneuver to give her company early momentum. She didn't name names, but she made sure people connected the dots to Newman. She knows what she's doing. Lily folded her arms tightly, a storm brewing behind her eyes. So you're saying this was calculated? It was more than calculated, Nate replied. It was designed to provoke. Devin leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Provoke who, though? Newman? Us? Or Dumas? Abby stood near the window, arms crossed, watching the clouds roll in over the skyline. I think she wanted everyone to see her as a rising power. She wanted the world to believe she was being backed by Victor. And maybe she is. Devin shook his head. That doesn't make sense. Victor wouldn't align himself publicly unless he knew what was coming. Unless he knew Dumas's next move. Lily's voice was quiet but sharp. Or unless he is the next move. The room fell into silence. It was Abby who spoke first, her tone hesitant but edged with the fear she hadn't yet voiced. What if Dumas knows that Victor is backing Audra's effort? What if this whole thing, the press release, the dead body, Claire's arrest, it's all part of a larger retaliation? Lily leaned forward. That would mean he's watching all of us. Closely. Devin exhaled. He has to be. He's 2 steps ahead every time. He killed Damian before any of us even knew they were in the same building. He framed Claire with evidence that barely leaves room for question. That takes planning. That takes surveillance. That takes resources, Nate finished grimly. And obsession, Lily added. But it wasn't just the audacity of Dumas's tactics that disturbed them. It was the eerie possibility that he wasn't some foreign mastermind operating from the shadows, but rather someone they already knew. Someone with motive. With access. With a grudge that had been simmering for years. And that's when Lily said it. What if Dumas is Tucker? The room froze. Devin scoffed quietly, more out of disbelief than dismissal. No. The timeline doesn't line up. Tucker was out of the country when this all started. If he was going to resurface as someone like Dumas, he would have had to build that identity years ago. He's too impulsive. Too sloppy. But what if that's the point? Lily pushed back. What if the impulsiveness is a mask? What if the real Tucker has been hiding in plain sight, and what we've seen is just the performance? Abby turned from the window. My father doesn't operate like that. No, Lily said, but Tucker does love to reinvent himself. And he hates being underestimated. Devin stood. He also hates Victor. That much hasn't changed. That single fact lingered in the room like a warning bell. If Tucker had the means, the rage, and the strategic brilliance to construct a new identity, if he had been working behind the scenes all this time, weaving together a global persona known as Aristotle Dumas, then everything they were experiencing now wasn't chaos. It was revenge. Nate leaned against the back of the chair, speaking slowly. If it's Tucker, then this isn't just about business anymore. It's personal. Deeply. And if Victor's supporting Audra in any way, knowingly or unknowingly, he could be walking right into a trap. And if it's not Tucker, Abby said, then we're wasting time chasing a ghost while someone else is tearing this family apart. Lily rose from her chair, pacing now. Her mind raced through every strange detail of the past few weeks. The silence from Dumas. The sudden death of Damian. The poison. The evidence against Claire. Audra's perfectly timed rise. And Victor, always calculated, always one move ahead, who now found himself helpless in the face of a foreign government that didn't care about his name or legacy. I don't know who Dumas is, she finally said, but I do know this, whoever he is, he sees all of us as pawns. Every move we make plays into his hand. Nate nodded. And that's why we can't underestimate him.